Welcome to Mujeres en Cambio's event featuring world-famous chef Kirsten West. Kirsten West is the world's expert on Mexican cuisine, and she will also talk about the culture behind the cuisine. She first came to Mexico in 1970, fell in love with the markets, the food, and the people. Afterwards, she was accepted a position with Rick Bayless in Chicago, where she ran his test kitchen. After those 8 years, she fortunately moved to San Miguel and started her own cooking school called Pina Azul. So you're going to learn a lot about Mexican cuisine, the culture behind it, and why peanuts are so important. So we hope you'll enjoy our presentation, and thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, Joe, for that lovely introduction. Rosa Maria and I like this very much. As you can see, she's my doppelganger, and she was given to me for the opening of my cooking school here, La Pina Azul, by my really good friend, Guadalupe Alvarez. And as you can imagine, at every class, she is the undisputed center of attention. I have very close ties with Mujeres en Cambio. Georgianne Johnson, one of the founders, is my landlady, and I have lived in her fantastic casita for the last 14 years. Also, we've had some really activities going on here with volunteers in the kitchen when we were preparing food for Mujeres en Cambio activities, fundraisers, and so that's about my background with Mujeres en Cambio. Why do I wear what I'm wearing when I'm working in the kitchen? I relate very much to what's referred to as the mayoras de cocina, which are the elders of the kitchen. Right? Today they're only referred to as mayoras, just like chefs. They were chefs de cuisine, they were, boss of the kitchen, and people get a little lazy, and so they drop the cuisine, and now it's just chef. However, in other languages, you have to kind of be a bit careful, because chef could just also mean the boss, and it has nothing to do with kitchen. So the mayoras were working in the Porfiriato, in the very opulent casonas, and when the Porfiriato tumbled, then they were out of work. But it didn't take very long for the Mexico City restaurateurs to realize that here were some highly trained cooks that they could engage or use in their restaurants. And so to this day, there are still mayoras in several restaurant kitchens in Mexico City. And they don't really want to be TV stars or anything like that. They really just want to cook some very, very good food, and they do. They're very close, tied with each other. They have their own guild, so it's really a wonderful, close, tied community of excellent cooks. And somehow I feel more like I'm part of them and not so much a chef. Okay, so a presentation on peanuts sounds, well, just like that, peanuts. However, there's more to peanuts than you could ever believe, and after this hour of my presentation, you'll definitely know very differently. And so I'll start with saying, if you're watching this Zoom, you're probably not watching from the peanut gallery, and if you live in San Miguel, you probably didn't work for peanuts. And so these sayings go on and on. There's numerous of them, but they always refer to something little or insignificant. And like I said, in this following hour, you will learn a lot different about peanuts and what an incredible plant that is. I need to say something about peanut allergy because it's very prominent these days. And I have to say, obviously in the beginning, when people started growing peanuts, there was no such issue with peanut allergy. And I would say the way they have been growing in the last decades with lots and lots of fertilizers and chemical pesticide, maybe this is not something that is so good for our bodies. So let me talk about the peanut plant. It's a very unusual plant, and it grows about to be 3 feet tall, and it has beautiful yellow flowers. And when it's blooming, the yellow flowers will eventually develop a shoot that goes down and into the ground. It burrows itself into the ground, which already is very unusual because this shoot is not very strong. And at the end, it has a seed. And once it has buried itself into the ground, then this is where the peanut develops. And so when you see harvesting peanuts and the whole peanut plant is pulled out, then you'll notice that it's not on the roots. It's on those little shoots. Each one of them hangs individually by one of these. And so I want to also point out, my students always like that, our most prominent peanut planter, peanut farmer, was President Jimmy Carter. So the origin of peanuts is in Peru. And they assume that it goes back, the growing of peanuts goes back several thousand years. Some places you see 6,000, sometimes you see 7,000. What they have found in Peru on the coastal region where the mochi culture existed, they have found, among other sculptures that depicting food that is grown in that area, they have found a wonderful necklace that is made with silver and gold, and it's a necklace of stylized peanuts, as you see here in this picture. The peanut then eventually grew to South America, where it was planted heavily, and also to Mexico. So when the Spaniards came to Mexico, they eventually, saw a lot of new foods that they had never seen before, including the peanuts, and they saw these most likely at the market in Tlatelolco, which was in the city of Tenochtitlan, which is the present-day Mexico City. The Mexican cuisine did not use oil for cooking. They only, like open fire or pit cooked, but not with oil. But it didn't take the Spaniards very long to find out that this peanut was high in concentrated oils. And that's what really, in the end, spawned a frenzy in exporting it where oil was needed and where it was not growing. So San Miguel also has a really deep tie to this exporting frenzy. You probably all know the Casa Canal in Jardín, the most spectacular mansion that we have in San Miguel. And the Canal, or the Count of Canal, who came here to San Miguel to do business, wasn't a poor man. His father had already made a fortune in Spain as a trader in various things, including peanuts. So he was exporting peanuts from Mexico to Europe and to Africa. And so I sort of call it like the mansion peanuts built, okay? As the Spaniards traveled around Mexico and discovered its riches and also its geography in general, they eventually came upon this wonderful natural harbor in Acapulco. And that spawned another whole means of exporting, where they started shipping things from Mexico to India and to China and to the Far East. And the Portuguese built like these tremendously large boats or ships that were called the Manila galleons. And they traveled back and forth the Pacific twice a year. And they did this for 250 years. And this is what spawned a tremendous exchange of goods. Like a lot of foods, like went to the Far East, and a lot of goods from there, like silk and some pottery and everything, came back to Mexico. So there was a very brisk exchange going on, and you can imagine 250 years is quite a long time. When crossing the Middle Passage, the African slaves had already been, in Africa, the peanuts had already been planted or growing for quite some time. And so when the slaves were transported to the south of the US, they had peanuts on board to nourish themselves. And eventually, they started growing them in the south. And this is where the myth comes in that people say peanuts are from Africa, which by now you know they're not, they're from Peru. But anyway, so for the longest time, peanuts were kind of like associated with lowly food, with slave food, poor people's food. And only during the Civil War became peanuts more important because they needed to feed the soldiers. And so that was a means of feeding them, very inexpensively. And so I need to talk about Mr. Carver, Dr. George Washington Carver. He was a freed slave, and he was very interested in studying peanuts, and he was working on the institute in Tuskegee, and where he ended up applying for 300 patents for things to do with peanuts. But I'll only focus on a small part of his doings. He tried to encourage black planters, if there were any, to grow peanuts, because the peanut plant restores nitrogen in the soil, while cotton just depletes it and makes it eventually useless. And so he also found a machine that made it easier to grind peanuts for peanut butter. Now, peanut butter was not commonly eaten in those days, but the purpose was to actually feed it to people that had no teeth, so that they had access to nutrition. And so if you want to know more about Dr. George Washington Carver, I highly recommend that you go on YouTube. He had a fascinating life, and they actually even made a movie about his life. And it's very inspiring and very unique, very amazing. Dr. Carver even had his face on one of the United States postal stamps, which is usually like one of the highest honors you can achieve. So much for peanuts, and now we're going into starting making some products, some baked dishes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to make is an appetizer, and I'm going to make it with jicama. I'm sure you all have seen a jicama, but maybe you don't quite know what to do with it. Usually it's not used for cooking. It can be used. What I recommend sometimes, if you cook Chinese food, it makes a really good substitute for water chestnuts, and you can use it for that. But other than that, it's usually just eaten raw. So I'm going to make a dish that is served raw. First, I'm going to show you how to peel it, because the skin is too thick to be peeled with a vegetable peeler, and it wobbles, so it will probably fight you. So in order to not hurt yourself or cut yourself, I'll show you how to do this very safely. So you cut a slice off either end, and then, as you can see, now it's really safe, okay? And then you start cutting away from here. You cut away, okay? This is an important word, because you don't want to cut toward yourself. We're not trying to commit harakiri here. And you cut around. And I learned to do this from one of my Mexican helpers in Los Angeles, and she had been selling jicama as a little girl in the street, and I figured she has probably peeled more jicama than she cares to remember. And you turn it over, and we're still on the safe side. It doesn't wobble or anything, and you go down this way. So until it's completely peeled. When you're picking a jicama, you want it to have fairly smooth skin, no cuts or bruises, and this way you have a guarantee that you have a wonderful, juicy, and delicious jicama. Here we go. Okay? And so the next step is that we're going to slice it. And I have my nice slicer here that I've had for years. I prefer this. It's a Japanese one. And the reason being is that the blade holds up forever, being really sharp. A lot of slices, the blades dull very quickly. And this one, you can see, makes beautiful slices. Okay, so if it gets a little too wide for the blade, then we just cut some off. Okay, here we go. And then the next thing we'll show you is I'm going to put this here right now, and I'm going to talk about the seasoning. So this is going to be sprinkled with chili powder. And I have various, you first have your peanuts, and you want them toasted, and you put them into a dry pan. Remember I spoke earlier that there was no use of oil in Mexican cooking. So the pan is dry, okay? And you toss them until they turn just lightly brown, not very much. And then they get put into a spice grinder. I use a coffee grinder that I can use just for spices. And the nice one here is that this part comes off. And so you can actually put that in the dishwasher. And so here we are putting the, yeah. You don't want to make it more than just half full so that it grinds nicely. And here we go. It's going to make a noise. There we go. You'll see it takes nothing to make it nice and fine and powdery. And then you can do the next batch as well. I'm just going to show you this here. Okay. And I'll need, necesita una tazón como esta, por favor. I'll need a little bowl that we can mix in. Thank you. By the way, I'd like to introduce to you, this is Susanna. She's been with me for over 6 years, and she's the best help in the world, and don't you dare touch her, okay? She's mine. We have had several women fight over her with me. Okay, here we go. So here we have the wonderful ground peanuts. And you need to make sure you don't do this too long, because otherwise you'll end up with peanut butter. Okay, so we have wonderful ground peanuts. And then we're adding chili. First, this is what it should look like. It's ground up chile de árbol. However, if you don't have chile de árbol, and this is what they look like. And I need to point out a little thing here. You notice the difference? These have stems, and they're not squeezed. They're still round, which means these are grown in Mexico. These are from the supermarket, and you notice they have no stems, and they're real squished. And that means they're grown in China, which is not very nice. But the reason they have no stems and they're squished is because the stem are extra weight, and the squishy part is to pack them really tight. So you might want to keep that in mind. If you're looking for chili, try and get some with the stem and nice and round. Or, of course, you can always grow your own. They're very easy to grow, and we're in a climate where they will grow nicely. So I have taken some of these or some of this and put them into my blender. And a little bit of warning, when you take the lid off, don't have your head over it, because you'll get a whiff of very hot powder. So if you don't have access to these, then what you can do is you can in the supermarket you can buy chili flakes, okay, seeds and all, which is another good substitute. And then again you'll put it in the spice grinder, or you can buy this in the supermarket as well. Usually it's not pure chili de arbol. It'll have a cumin and other spices in, because it's really meant for the dish chili, okay? So what we'll start here, and this is kind of like, as we say, al gusto. Depending on how hot you like it, you put a small amount in here and then mix it. And you can go along and taste it as you do this, or you pretty much, by the time you've done it for a few times, you know how much chili you can add in. But be careful, if you make it too hot, there's no way of going back. So it's easier to add on than to, and then we get some salt. Salt? Okay, so we put a little salt in here. And that's it, 3 ingredients. Okay? All right, so we're ready to dress the jicama. And the way we do that is like we line up the slices. Here we go. Like so. Okay, and Susanna already has a platter ready for me, so I'll exchange that with her, see? So we have this all nicely lined up, and you sprinkle it with lime. Now limes did not grow here in Mexico. Let's see, I think that's it. They come from the Chinese region, so as you remember I talked about the exchange, so they came over from China, and I've disappointed a lot of Mexicans by telling them that the lime is not from Mexico. They love lime on everything, Okay, so we have lime juice here, and then we sprinkle this mixture on top. Okay. And it doesn't matter if there's still some whole peanuts in there. It makes it a little crunchier. You can also make just peanut sticks if you like to, if you don't want to slice it, or if you don't have a slicer. You make sticks like French fry sticks, and you stick them in a drinking glass with the lime at the bottom. And then you serve this on the side, and then they can dip their sticks into the mixture, okay? And this is how you end up eating them. I'll demonstrate how to do this. It's finger food, so you pick one up and you bite into it. Mm-hmm. Yummy. Very delicious. So once you have your ground up peanuts, put it in a jar and keep it in the refrigerator, because remember how I was talking about the high oil content? Now that they're broken down, the oil is exposed, and if you leave it out, it will eventually go rancid very quickly. So you keep this in the refrigerator. And let me tell you, you can sprinkle this just about on anything. Lettuce, vegetables, whatever you like. It is just a nice little extra touch, and you always have it handy. Okay, so now we're going to make the chicken in peanut sauce, or you can also call it a mole. And I have to tell you, every time I made this in my classes and people started tasting it, they kept saying, oh, that is a nice Thai sauce. And remember, no, Thai did not have peanuts until the Manila galleons came and brought them along. So, but anyways, this is a very old Mexican sauce. And what I do is here in a dry skillet, I toast the onions a little bit. I toast the garlic in the skin. This is how we do it here. If you put raw garlic on the burner, there's a good chance, lower the heat a little bit. We're smoking. There. If you put raw garlic on the burner, there's a chance that it will scorch really quickly. And so by having it in the shell, it peels very easily, but you can see it still has a little bit of a tan. And so this is a nice way of roasting peanuts, garlic. This one doesn't have to be very good looking, so we'll forget it. And now that we have the onions a bit roasted, we add in the dry spices, and that would be a stick of cinnamon, and that would be some cloves. You'll see all this in the recipe, and some black salt. Pepper. And this is a method that's done in a lot of cuisines, especially Indian cuisine, that you put whole spices on the fire just quickly, and I call it to wake up the seasoning. And don't buy ground spices ever, because you don't know how long they've been sitting on the shelf. You don't know when they were ground. You are getting a lot more mileage out of your spices if you grind them yourself, and of course you will have a nice little spice grinder and make that very, very easy. So the next thing now, we have tomatoes, and we have the roasted. Again, I roasted these like I did for the first course, for the jicama, and I have some water. And so if you grind something in the blender, I would always suggest that you start with the soft things, because it will be easier for the blades to dislodge. And then you put your peanut in, and your onion. Your garlic. Man, I can't say it. Okay, here we go. Everything goes in and gets ground up. Let's see. This is a little hot. So if you take my advice about buying whole spices, you'll get a lot more flavor out of your spices. You'll see, you'll thank me for this tip. So 2 cups of water. Okay. Let's see, we don't need this anymore. And off there. All right, this is nice and smooth. Okay. And here on the side, I have my fried chicken, and I'm going to take those out, and they have been browned, I should say, not fried. They've been browned after they've been marinating in a little bit of lime juice and salt. And I like to leave the skin on and the bones in, because it gives the dish in the end a lot more flavor. If you don't like to eat it, it's okay. But I think by adding it onto the sauce, you definitely will enjoy the fact that it's very, very flavorful. Okay. All right. And in goes the sauce. Okay, gracias. And you stir this and cook it until it has thickened a little bit. This is your sauce. And, it will come together quickly and be nice and thick. And so once it has become nice and thick, it could be a little longer, but right now I'm just going to leave it at that. You put your chicken pieces back in. And you continue cooking until the chicken is cooked. And if you get the recipe, you'll realize it's a fairly large proportions, like it's for 4.5 pounds of chicken. And you know, whenever you make this kind of sauce, you never make just a little bit. It's usually always very generous. Here we go. Okay, and so now you bring this to a boil and let it boil for maybe 15-20 minutes until the chicken is done. Okay, so now the peanut sauce and the chicken is done, and we're going to start plating. And let's see, I need this. It's kind of slippery. We'll do maybe a bone, a leg, and a bone, like so. And then when you're serving mole or any sauce in Mexico, it's usually served very generous. I always had a hard time when I had my catering business. I had to run up and down the line and say, more sauce, more sauce, more sauce, because sauce is the main attraction a lot of times. So here we have more sauce. Okay. And you can see now also it has thickened up nicely. Okay. All right. And then we can add on some, here, I'll do this. I used here like these little fried potatoes. You can add rice, noodles, whatever you like, you know, like from here on it's really just up to you what you prefer to serve with this. And I'm just a fan of little potatoes. Okay, and then I have some broccoli here that we can add on. That's just steamed, and it makes a nice plate. Let's see, maybe one more little. Okay, and then of course we want to trapa, por favor. Cortado, no? Okay, so we want a clean plate, so it's okay to wipe it, restaurant style, and then I have a little parsley that we can put over the potatoes, and here you have a very appetizing looking, wonderful plate. And the mole and the chicken you can actually make in advance. It really tastes a lot better the second day when everything has kind of meshed together. So there you go, chicken in peanut sauce with little potatoes and broccoli. Okay, now we're on the home run. We're ready to make dessert, and I'm going to make a peanut mousse, which might sound very strange to you. But you know, Mexicans really like Jell-O. And so this is sort of based on Jell-O. And the only thing you need to make with this recipe, which is like the night before, you want to make the mixture that I'm showing you how to make, but then we don't have to wait a night. I have it already, and it's already stiff, and this is going to be our base for making the mousse. So let me show you how to make this particular part. So first, again, we have, as you have seen in the past, you know, the toasted peanuts, and I'm not going to show it again, but you know, in a dry pan. And then I'm going to put this into the blender, and we're going to grind them. You want to sort of switch this up and down a little bit for the peanuts to kind of be, you know, blended. Okay, and then we put in 2 cups of water and a cup and a half of sugar, and we're blending this again. And then I have a cup of water here, a little bit of half a cup, and we're going to mix in the gelatin. And you can buy Knox here, or you can buy generic here. I've bought an envelope of Knox, okay? And you stir it up a little, and you make sure that the granules dissolve. And then in the meantime, we're putting a pot on the stove, and we're putting the ground up peanuts in here. Here we go. So this is all there's to it. I mean, it's easy, you know, it's nice. It's nice, easy, peasy. So here, this looks like they're pretty much getting to the south. We're going to turn on the heat here. Okay, so when this is hot and it has cooked down a little, then we can add the gelatin. Okay, and like I said, the gelatin is pretty much dissolved, and you add this in and bring it to a boil, and that's all there's to it. I would say you can even teach that to your kids how to make it. And so here we have now the hardened, this part overnight gets put in the refrigerator, and then it gets hard. And so we're putting this into a bowl, because it's kind of hard to use the beater in this box. But make sure you cover the mixture with a lid, because a lot of times these things take on the flavor of the refrigerator, which we don't necessarily want. Okay? And so out comes my fearless beater. Okay, this is perfect. And we'll put this over here. And then we have whipping cream. Whipping cream. Yeah. It gets blended in. This gives it sort of like the mousse consistency. So we have whipping cream, and you start with maybe 1 or 2 spoonfuls, and you kind of pull it under. You don't stir it rigorously, because you want the fluffiness to still last for a bit. Okay? And now that we have this sort of drawn in, we'll just do the rest. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, whipping cream. You know, I'm half Danish. And do we love whipping cream? We do. We do. They even make lettuce salad with whipping cream. And let me tell you, it's delicious. Anyways, so here we go. We have this nicely. Okay, so don't over mix it, because you really want to see that it has whipping cream in it. Okay? And then we're going to fill it into cocktail glasses, or whatever you have, decorative glasses. I'm not doing the whole recipe, but if you follow the recipe once you get it, it makes enough for 16 servings. So it's a good party serving, you know. And like I said, all you have to do, oops, that was messy. All you have to do is basically have the gelatin ready and make the whipping cream, and you're in business. Okay. Well, it beats peanut butter, I can tell you that. Here we go. So, one more for good measure. if you do this in the States, there's a chance your whipping cream is a little firmer. We're having a hard time here getting good whipping cream. It tastes good, but it's not getting really nice and stiff. And I was being messy, so Susana's gonna, vamos a limpiar el río. Clean this up for us. Perfect, beautiful. And then we have some pureed raspberries that we use for sauce to pour over. And some fresh raspberries to put on as a decoration. And a little sprig of mint. Always looks nice. Okay? Perfect. Oh, this mint smells absolutely divine. Let's see, I'm running out of berries here. Here we go. And some more tops. Oops. The mint is from our garden, and I can tell you, between the mint that you buy at the Mercado and this is a big difference. This already smells up the whole room. And there you go. And the other nice thing that we have made from peanuts is marzipan. So if you've seen this in the store, maybe you can pass this along as a little extra bonus with your mousse, okay? And that's it. Mousse de peanut. So we'll show you all of the all the meals together, and a beauty shot, as we call it, and then you're on your own. And I hope you make these at home. It's delicious. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Here is the full menu. You have the appetizers, the jicama with the peanut spices on them. And then you have your peanut sauce and chicken with little potatoes and broccoli. And like I said, the potatoes and broccoli is totally up to you what you like to pick. And here is the grand finale, is the peanut mousse with raspberry sauce. And as a little bonus, maybe little rounds of peanut marzipan. Not like we have in other places with almonds. These are made with peanuts, and they're absolutely delicious. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you will be able to cook some of these delicious items. Bon appetit!